Hello and welcome to another edition of GreenFleet Talks. My name is Kate Armitage and I'm hosting our discussion today. And I'm delighted to be joined again by Joe Hadari, who is Fleet and Optimization Sales Director at Trakm8. Joe, nice to see you again.
Hi Kate, how are you?
Very, very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, not bad, not bad.
Good. So, Joe, today we're talking much more about commercial vehicles. And we know that passenger vehicles and the decarbonisation of passenger vehicles has progressed very well. And that's been a real success story. But the story is not quite the same with commercial vehicles. So, and I'm talking about vans and I'm talking about larger trucks. What are some of the challenges that you see that these commercial vehicle operators are facing?
Yeah, a number of challenges, Kate, but I think the biggest one that I see is the balancing act between operational and financial goals. Electric and alternative fuel vehicles often come with higher upfront costs. I think that's one of the big decisions for a lot of businesses. The other big thing is they may have to make changes to their day-to-day operations. You've got to then take into account payload, EV range. You've got to make infrastructure changes. So, where your vehicles are overnight, do the drivers take the vehicles home? If the battery drops below a certain level, where do they charge that vehicle? You might have to install charging points at your offices or on site. So there are a number of upfront costs, not just the vehicle in itself, that needs to be taken into account by businesses. But also, as I say, there might be things and there might be restrictions in terms of how they operate. They may be able to change it. They may not be able to because they're contractually committed to certain things with their customers. So there are financial and operational challenges for them that kind of stops them from that speeding up for them to move quickly and have lots of more EVs in their commercial fleet.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge, much more challenging environment.
Absolutely.
And the contractual thing is quite interesting.
Yeah, and what we do essentially at Trakm8, we, thanks to telematics and all the data that we collect, we help customers make informed decisions by looking at historical journeys. You look at driver behavior. You can look at the vehicle range. You may have a particular vehicle that does the same journey every day to a number of particular sites and customers. We can look at that and say, well, actually, we believe this particular vehicle can switch to EV right now because of the range and the area they operate in, and potentially identify charging spots that can be used in that day-to-day kind of operation. So it's and again, we talked a bit about this before. It's more of a step-by-step, gradual transition again, rather than changing everything overnight. So yeah, using telematics data, we do help some customers identify those low-hanging fruits where they can switch EVs.
And with the as you've said, Trakm8 is a provider of telematics. It's not necessarily about with the telematics. It's not just about electrification, is it? There are helping commercial vehicles effectively reduce their emissions in other ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things we talked about in our previous podcast that we did was what could fleet operators do right now if they, for example, have financial challenges where they can't adopt EVs. What could they potentially do to start reducing their CO2 emissions and I guess get onto that journey for some customers to almost build a case by potentially reducing costs of their fleet, fuel costs and things like that, and therefore have a budget later down the line to be able to invest in EVs and accelerate that kind of process. So one of the key things that we provide in terms of data sets is efficiency perspectives on our platform. So that's very much in the same way that we identify risky drivers when it comes to safety in terms of speeding, harsh braking, harsh acceleration, and so on. We can apply the same logics for drivers who are inefficient. So essentially, erratic driving, harsh braking, all these things will lead to excessive fuel usage and therefore higher CO2 emissions. And so we can really drill into data sets to understand, okay, out of my 50 drivers, who are the 10 that I need to have conversations with, and improve their driver behavior that hopefully then leads to reduction in CO2 emissions. So we work with fleet operators on a regular basis to identify those high level sort of data sets that can give us a story of who are the least efficient drivers in the fleet. And then we start doing some coaching sessions to help those drivers to hopefully improve over time.
What you're describing is the foundations of any good business fleet, isn't it? Irrespective of decarbonisation, irrespective of electric vehicles, it's having that ability to know what your drivers are doing and make informed decisions about how they could be more efficient, which will drive cost savings as well as emission savings.
Yeah, absolutely. It goes hand in hand. And as you know, one of the other solutions that we do is optimization, which plays an even bigger role, to be honest, than telematics. But the two big differences that almost probably 90+% businesses do have a telematics system, whereas not everyone has an optimization plan. So if you already have a system that you've already invested in and you're already collecting that data, then it's almost what I call low-hanging fruit. It's where you should start before you go on to investing in EVs or even optimization, to be honest. So we encourage fleet operators all the time to actually look into the data. And to be honest, also, you need to ensure that the telematics platform that you're using it has the features and it can give you data sets in a way that you can action things and make solid decisions rather than just dumping data that makes no sense almost. So yeah, that's, I think, if you have an existing telematics system, I would encourage you to start looking at the data, and sort of start actioning and look at the drivers that are perhaps not great when it comes to driver behavior, and that will be a low-hanging fruit where you can start improving things.
And this is really where AI starts to come into play, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. In all of our kind of customer base, I think we have about 250,000 connections now. So that's the number of units that are installed into vehicles. And so they're constantly transmitting data. And the thing that fuels AI, as everyone knows, is data. So whether it's our cameras, whether it's our telematics devices, we're constantly collecting data. And in order to speed things up and do things much quicker, you have AI tools that can essentially do that for you. And so utilizing that data that we collect, we can identify areas that needs to be addressed very, very quickly. So predictive maintenance is one of the key things that we do, but also driver behavior stuff. We can kind of flag up any drivers where they need coaching, they need that help. And so that's where fleet managers, rather than sitting there and going through large data sets, they can use some of the AI features that we have on our platform to be able to, I guess, be more efficient in the way they do things themselves.
Great. And thinking about commercial transport and not simply electrification, but kind of what are the wider opportunities? You've talked about some already, but what are the wider opportunities for decarbonisation in commercial transport?
Yeah, I mean, I would really encourage people to have a think about AI optimization. It's something that we provide, but there are other providers out there. It's a lesser known solution compared to telematics, but it does wonderful things in terms of taking into account the objectives and the workload that you have. A good example of that is that we work with a couple of major supermarkets in the UK, and essentially our optimization algorithms are working in the background constantly to provide details and a plan for them to be able to deliver their groceries to customers' homes in the most efficient way. And so the two key objectives, high-level objectives for the algorithm, is to essentially deliver more by doing less miles. So the target is to increase the level of, or the amount of delivery that we do, but at the same time do it with less miles.
Yeah.
Which not only helps those supermarkets reduce fleet cost overall because they're doing more with less, but also at the same time it's reducing their CO2 emissions because they're burning less fuel. And there's lots of other tangible benefits, because if you're doing less miles, there's less chance of breakdown, so therefore your maintenance cost will reduce, number of accidents, which will help your insurance costs. So there are so many other benefits aside from just reducing cost of reducing CO2 emissions. So I would encourage people to look into optimization, because again, commonly people think it's just a route planning software. I mean, that's just one element of it. It takes into account different vehicle types. It takes into account payload, particular vehicles that you might need for particular jobs. So various factors and constraints that you may have and need in your business as part of your workflow. The systems are smart enough to take all those things into account and still spit out the most efficient way for you to be able to do those jobs.
Yeah.
Collections, deliveries, whatever it may be.
For sure. And this is a dynamic environment, right? Not least of which what's going on in the roads. What you think is going to happen at the beginning of the day may be completely different by the end of the day.
Yeah, and this is one of the things I talk about all the time. So, and I use there's an area in Birmingham called Spaghetti Junction. I don't know if you've heard of it. So I've had, because our office is not far from there, so I've had the pleasure of making that journey quite often. And of course, on a motorway, the standard road speed for cars, for example, will be 70 miles an hour. But if you're traveling through that time in the morning at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, you'd be lucky to do 20 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So what our system does, it takes into account historical traffic data, and it plans according to that level of traffic and that time of day. So all the ETAs that you get and the PTAs that you get, which again you can share with your customers, will be fairly accurate. So I would really encourage people to look into optimization as a way to kind of decarbonize, but also make lots of good savings as well.
Right. Well, Joe, thank you very much for your insights. As always, it has been a pleasure talking to you.
And you, Kate, thanks very much for your time again.
Thank you. And thank you to Trakm8 for joining GreenFleet Talks. And thank you for watching. Please tune into GreenFleet Television again soon.